skills. I'm Ciara from Agile, based out of St. Pete, originally from Delaware. Thank you for joining us today for Last Friday Job Party. We have a special guest today, Kelli. She is going to be joining us. Ben had a family commitment, couldn't be here today. That's all right. We kicked him off the island. It is a ladies' takeover. So Kelli, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about, your experience and your business and why we should all listen to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Give some context so then people understand the advice that I'm giving and if it makes sense for you and if it doesn't. So my background, I've been 17 years in recruitment, more on the kind of consultant side, agency background, and have supported enterprise level organizations, startups, marketing agencies, pretty hyper localized in the DMV, but not binded to, and really supporting business leaders in hiring, marketing, and tech talent. So that's kind of my niche area of expertise, and happy to be here and offer any insights as somebody who has worked full desk, 360, and worked with dozens of hiring leaders. So I'm able to give a really unique perspective on just partnering with hiring managers, going through that sourcing and recruitment process. Certainly have worked embedded and worked with ATS systems too, so can speak on that behalf. So just happy to share my own experience and give my 2 cents about how hopefully I can help support anyone who's trying to navigate this crazy job market right now.
Perfect. Well, we really appreciate you joining us today, and I'm excited to dive into it. This is a gentle reminder that this is a live session, so the Q&A is open, the chat is open, especially because I think we're going to have a bit of a smaller group today. I don't know, marketing probably didn't post this as early as she should have, that, interactive, so questions, we want to be able to answer them. But the main topic that we want to talk on today is really, if we put a flashy title, Stop Getting Ignored, Stop Getting Ghosted. It's communication, and that's what we want to talk about. So what we're going to be doing is breaking down, what the situation is, what happens, and what we can do about it, because there are things that we can control and things that we can't control, just like everything else. So let's get kind of diving into it, talking about what is ghosting, why is it going on, what else do you want to call it? Kelli, do you want to hit this, or do you want me to take this one?
I'll give you the recruiter definition of ghosting, right?
Yes.
Because I see ghosting being thrown around a lot. And so, at the end of the day, I think from a recruiter standpoint too, and I am not one who is here to advocate for the true definition of ghosting, but I think there's 2 perspectives, and people are getting very frustrated when they are applying to jobs and not hearing back or receiving any response from organizations, kind of categorizing that as just ghosting. And to your point, employers should be set up with at least bare minimum of sending like an auto, receipt of your application. Maybe they're going through the process, a receipt back, like we closed the job. So, you not hearing back is a little bit different than ghosting. And again, my definition of ghosting is when you've actually had some form of communication or engagement with the company. So, maybe a recruiter reached out and had, hey, listen, we want you to come in and interview. And whether that's an initial screen all the way through 6 interviews, and then they just leave you hanging and you don't hear what the status is. And, frankly, you have given some time to the process. I'm a firm believer that they should be, again, bare minimum is some form of auto response of where you are in that process. Of course, I'm a big believer in creating a good candidate experience. And so, of course, they should be, whether that is through email or phone or text or whatever that means, the communication is getting back to you. So that was a very long-winded explanation of ghosting. But again, that's, the different, I think, degrees that we're seeing in the job market right now.
And I love that distinction that you made, because we can almost think of this the same way we think of dating, right? Your LinkedIn profile, your Bumble profile, they kind of function very similar, right? So if you don't match with somebody, you don't match, and a nice, hey, we didn't connect would be great, but it's not like they left you at the altar, right?
Exactly. I know. And I'm so old here. I never had to get to use any of the fun dating app. People are probably laughing at me. They're like, that is not fun, the dating apps. But right to that point, and you hear from people who are like, they ghosted and didn't show up. And it's just, some point of engagement, and then somebody drops off just because it's typically the easier way to go. And thinking about too, like the reasons why this could be happening. And I've certainly seen it on the internal TA team, or really external, is systems aren't put in place. And listen, like in an age where we have automation set up, like in theory, a lot of these companies could be setting up a system to just remind people. There's software that's capable of reminding them like, hey, these people were in the process, get back to them. So there's just a lack of internal systems that are being probably built out to do that. Maybe just, the other side of that is people are scared. I mean, it's not fun to reject people, right? Like nobody looks forward to that. And it's really, a skill I think that people need to learn as far as how to communicate that information. And I know when I started recruiting, nobody taught me how to do that. I mean, you kind of EQ, I think you kind of figure it out, right? And treat people how you want to be treated. But sometimes it's just easier to not do it. So again, it's not right. But I think that, training and, leadership should be making sure that recruiters are doing what they need to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we have to think of this from the recruiter side as well, that, we've all worked jobs where you're doing a little too much sometimes, and it is not uncommon for recruiters to be working multiple requisitions at once, or on an internal TA team to be doing some massive hiring. Now, at the higher level roles that, Kelli and I would be usually recruiting for, you're probably only looking for one or two candidates. But I have been on teams where we are hiring 400 people a week with 5, 6 people, and it's absolutely crazy. And things fall through the cracks. So, you know, think of it that way, that it's not necessarily that the recruiter like hated you and they're kind of never texting them back. They're human, things fall through the crack, but that doesn't mean that we can't do better. And that doesn't mean that we can't work the system in our favor, right?
Yeah,
So kind
100%.
of going that way, once we're in the system, before the recruiter even sees us, it's not, it might be that the ATS isn't rejecting us, but the ATS isn't recognizing us, right? So we have to get to that recruiter first. Um, so if your resume is getting passed over, remember you might have not even been seen by the recruiter. You might have been in page 6 of their LinkedIn applications. I don't know if I'm sure you've done this as well. If you ever posted a job, Kelli, and you take your lunch and you come back and you have 2,000 applications.
Yes. And especially I would say to this point, and whether people, read job descriptions or not, I've been giving people advice as far as the remote roles are just getting absolutely slammed right now because, they're not tethered to a region and attracting talent from all over. So especially for those positions, I mean, those recs are filling up to your point of like 2,000 applicants within an hour. So, and again, the discussion of what internal TA teams can do to cut that number down is, I think, a conversation that's probably irrelevant for this audience, but kind of thinking on the end of the job seeker, what do you do, right? And I think sometimes it just comes down to, and I think, not speaking from like more of the low wage, high volume roles, and I can only speak on behalf of the searches that I conduct that will be, a little bit more niche, and thinking that, the recruiters that I know, while, and for years there was like the keyword scanner, right? And ATSs that, they could go in and score, and maybe they might offer suggestions of people where they might score a little bit higher. I still don't know any recruiters who would trust that system and also not audit and eyeball the resume and then determine, okay, maybe the keyword ranking was right. Let's move them over to an interview screen, rather than just allowing the computer system to just make those choices and then for you to interview. So, and I think, thinking about the Workday suit right now, right, with the AI, and thinking about how companies are kind of testing these AI tools, that I think most recruitment teams and talent acquisition teams are being very mindful ethically about allowing any technical system to really be moving that whole funnel, especially top of the funnel, through, that we are still, hopefully, humans are auditing those for this time. So I think kind of getting back to, how you're crafting, and I might be getting ahead of ourselves here, but kind of thinking about how you're crafting a resume is really, at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you really need to speak to the job recs itself, and making sure that you're kind of checking the box for all of those.
And I love those points, and I don't want to get into the whole Workday thing, but for those of you who haven't seen, there's something going on alleging some age discrimination through Workday's hiring process, and that's something that we're seeing in a lot of industries, and it's not just Workday, but it's a lot of these screening things, and that's what Kelli is speaking on here. The other point I wanted to make, kind of to our initial topic of why you might not be hearing back, is it's not uncommon for hiring managers to be very indecisive and to change what they want on the hour, especially as they see resumes, right? We've all had a boss that you turn in your work and they're like, this is great. And then they're like, actually, no, I saw something over here and they did this and they added X, Y, and Z. Can I have X, Y, and Z too? And like whether or not this role really needed it, now it has it, right? So you might have been a perfect fit for the job that you applied for, but on the other end, now it also requires, Scrum, Jira, whatever. It requires something else that's totally outside of your skill set. And that's just kind of how that happened. But I
Mhm.
don't want to focus on kind of the negative side of things. I wanted to make sure we spoke on it. We discussed what's going on so that we can go about what we can control. But we've got Scott in the chat. Scott Kelly is a personal friend of Ben's, I believe, and he is like our third co-host.
Oh, nice. I
He's
love that.
always here in the DM. So anything Scott's put in the chat is probably really good. Um,
Oh, it is good. I know I'm like reading and then trying to respond. I
yes,
did see Harvey's comment. Sorry, I don't want to take over here. I just saw
of course.
that you had mentioned that a recruiter reached out to you on Wednesday, probably like, hey, I have a great job. And then you responded and now you're not hearing anything. And I mean, I guess to Ciara's point, like things can change quickly. Maybe, and I'm just being a very blunt recruiter here, is maybe they saw something in your background where they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe the manager saw it and maybe they don't think you're a fit anymore. Maybe something changed internally where they were at the late stage of the process. Maybe somebody got an offer. Maybe the position is on hold. So it's really always hard, I think, being an outsider and understanding where, which it's always a great question if the hiring team is transparent about where are you in the process with other candidates and kind of understanding where you're entering that process in relation to everybody else who might be in that pipeline and at what stage too. So there's just a lot of elements that go on behind the scenes that it's really hard to gauge when you're kind of coming in or even applying to really understand all those different moving pieces of what's going on internally, which I know it's not something you can control other than ask questions and hope that you're getting some transparency.
Absolutely. And we're not here to tell job seekers to try harder. We get it. This is a full-time job, finding a job. But we want to show you the structural issues where these things are breaking down. And for myself, coming from a marketing's perspective, the 66% of you who answered our poll said that your biggest issue was not getting response. And I'm like, oh, that's branding. That's messaging. That is in my field.
Mhm.
So let's kind of go through where we can cut down on our messaging. So when you're on LinkedIn, I want you to think of it almost like you're at a mall and you're window shopping, right? But you are the display. So you're sending the message to the recruiter. That's your window display. If you are putting out, "Hello, my name is Ciara. I have applied for a job at your company," and they're not going to read it because you're not selling me anything. You're not giving me a chance to buy in. So think to yourself, 5 seconds. If this person looks at my message for 5 seconds, what do I want to convey? Kelli, what do you love to see when candidates message you? What makes a message stand out? Because I'm sure your inbox is flooded as well.
It is, right? And so I think to your point, and thinking there's people who have been in my network for years, right? So I don't need it to look super clean. I'm pretty lenient there, right? But thinking from people who are cold outreaching, I don't know who you are. LinkedIn, it gives context because I can go look at your profile, but email, let's go email, right? Pretending I
Yeah.
have no idea who you are. Yeah, I love to see. So I myself write very brief, to the point, call it a flaw, but I just like brevity to the point. And especially I think for everybody so busy. And I will also layer on now, there's so much digital noise, and especially with the use of Gen I now, it makes it so easy for everybody to just add to that noise. People want to keep it brief and read brief. So thinking about your messaging, I mean, if you want to do, I don't mind something really kooky to start off with, but I think really like, hey, listen, my name is blah. I'm thinking about exploring new opportunities. This is if you're not, and so I guess I should preface by saying as a consultant that I might have a number of different clients. So you might bucket into a couple of different needs. If you're thinking internally, Internal recruiters obviously represent one brand. They might have job recs on their site. So that might be a little bit more specific if you are specifically targeting a job. So that's, I think, also two different conversations to be had. But I think if you're reaching out to a recruiter first, it really helps to lead with your specific results. And this also translates over to a resume as well. But hey, listen, I recently worked at Workday and I was supporting digital marketing. This is the campaign that I supported. Tactically, this is what I did, and these are the results. And I think, all these soft, fluffy words that we see in any messaging, to be honest, I'm just skipping over it, right? Because I want something unique that you specifically have done. If you can lead with something specific, that's what stand out. Now, if it's internal and you're talking specifically about a job, if you can connect the dots as far as a job rec and what they're looking for from what you can assess from the job description, and then really nail and tie it to a recent project that you did that ties into that, that's going to get my attention, because you are going to be, basically hiring is a game of hiring somebody who is going to be the less risky option, right? So if you've done something that the company is looking for to get done, then that is a less risky option, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's your elevator pitch. It's your, what they teach you on the first day of business school. That's your why, and you're putting it out there right in front. Because just be honest, if somebody sends you 6 paragraphs, that's not a message I'm going to be inclined to open, because I know that's going to be a time sink, whether that sounds harsh or whatnot. But if, hey, I saw we're both in this space. I have done X, Y, and Z recently. Saw you're hiring for Z. Would love to connect.
There you go. That's the concise way that put it exactly. I mean, bullet points, but yes, that's what I was trying to say, but you put it in a nice formatting is exactly how I would like to see it on my end.
Yeah, and putting something in, that makes it real or human, it's a virtual handshake, if you will, right? I saw we both do this. I mean, Kelli, you and Ben, if I'm not wrong, you met because you both do the same charity work, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, we had actually, he became on my radar. We shared a seminar for the Doge seminar. So he caught my eye, and that, right, exactly. It can be somebody, some detail just as small as nonprofit work, right? That can tie you together. And so, call it bias, but sometimes it's just those small little chit chat conversations or side interests. And there can be some bias involved with that. And trust me, like I've flip-flopped back and forth even between me having hobbies on a resume too, because I see both sides of it. But I think if you can just strike up a conversation, again, whether people like it or not, there is certainly that likability factor, right? And being able to relate to someone and just being able to have a conversation that at least opens the door to have that conversation, and then explore any opportunities is obviously a huge plus too.
Yeah, just you don't even need your foot in the door. It's just getting your toe in the door. So, if you take that 10 seconds and skim through somebody's profile, I mean, and it doesn't even have to be something that's, super individual to you. We had the Super Bowl. I was working something up in PA. Go Birds on everything. Now I'm from there. That is my family's religion. We are Italian from Philly. But, you something as simple as that, it's just, oh yeah, like this is real life, these are real people, and it absolutely humanizes you like that.
Yeah.
On to our next, yeah, that context is what's gonna build your trust. Did anybody have any specific messaging questions that they wanted to hit on before we kind of moved into the next topic of talking about how to proposition your value? Anything in terms of attention getters, messages that you've used that you wanted to tweak, anything like that? I'm going to check the QA now.
Yeah, I would just say, because I do receive these a lot, as much as I, on a monthly basis, say to kind of level up your messaging, but hey, I'm thinking about exploring new job opportunities. What do you have for me? I mean, unless we've had a recent conversation, like I don't know where to go with that. And I think that this is true even for if you're starting to explore job opportunities, and not even to recruiters, but reaching out to, which is my number one tip, by the way, is start reaching out to all those first degree contacts, former colleagues, mentors, peers, people who can speak on behalf of your performance. when you're reaching out to them, again, it's not a, hey, listen, I'm looking for a new job. Be specific about what you've done, because sometimes if people haven't talked to you in a while, they don't really know what direction or who to refer you to or what your expertise is. So just giving them a quick refresh on what you've done might give them a better direction and be a better resource for you.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, things can completely change in 5 years. Personal example, some of you know, I was a dance teacher in college. I just got a video from my studio owner yesterday of me teaching an acrobatics class. And that was my job 5 years ago, So it's if you connected with somebody back then, they'd be like, she's doing what? She's aware. you know so refresh people, tell them what you're doing, update them, and it doesn't have to be a big heavy thing, but yeah, stay connected. I want to feed this question over to you, Kelly, and then I can chime in if you'd like. John is asking, what do you find more effective, messaging through LinkedIn or email?
So I love both. I mean, double down, text message, do what you need to do. So messaging, I mean, if you're connected first degree, I know the in-mails are typically, I think, dumped usually, I can't figure it out, but into that other box. And even I myself don't check that other box often. So, I mean, if you can, if you're connected through LinkedIn, I would also say I believe it has not changed, but if you are connected first degree, there should be an email, whether that's work or personal. So you can also scrape their email through there. There are also some great tools, Hunter.io, Apollo, where they can pull work emails, sometimes personal emails if you don't have their email. So I would just say because trust me, as a recruiter, I notice not everybody uses LinkedIn often. And everybody just has their own preference in terms of channels that they use too. So, while I'm not a big believer in cold outreach through text message, I will carry that over once I've engaged with someone. But I would say go for whatever you can and see. I mean, worst case scenario, they don't respond to you. So hit them up both ways.
Yeah, and going on to those like email finding websites, not always, 9 times out of 10, if you have somebody's email in that company and you know the name of the person you're trying to reach, you can figure it out. It's usually, blank dot blank at company.com
Mhm.
or initial name at company.com. So if you have one, try it out. If it bounces, try it another way.
Mhm.
That is our business development 101 right there. But that is a good way. And I will say, I know of the recruiters I work with, there are some that I do not use LinkedIn, like full stop. And I'm like, can I please have an updated headshot? Can I please, put this on your profile? No, but if you email them, they're going to answer. So it's going to depend a little bit on the person you're trying to connect with as well. A little bit of luck of the draw there.
Mhm.
If you were if you were trying to apply for a role that Ben Sheffield was hiring for, LinkedIn, but it's a little different.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Oh, we
right.
got some great office quotes coming in. All right. So I know we are coming up on time. What I want to make sure we hit on is showing, and I know we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but showing your value, not just your job title. Now, I usually go with the STAR method. Kelly, is that the one you use, or do you use a slightly different acronym?
I see, what is it like? And really the formatting and really, so it's like situation, problem, action, right? So you're talking
Yeah.
about what the problem was, and then the middle part is what did you do? And we see a lot of that on resumes, right? The big piece I consistently for years and years am always missing is the results, and really and I tell people like the simple, like what happened next? If you go line item through your resume and ask all the different reasons for what happened, and I think that that's really, to be honest, that's the biggest haul when it comes to just resume writing. Interview prep is really, and if you haven't done your due diligence, especially from like a quantitative standpoint, because I work with a lot of marketers who are like their KPIs, like that's what they're held to and that's what they're reviewing all the time. If you're not keeping track of that information, it can take so much time to go back and review it. But really think about, and really it's like, if you're scraping a job description, right? It's all of those results, or I'm sorry, not results, but kind of more the tasks that are written. So we need to focus on the R of the STAR method. And it might take some time to do that, but really just think about the direct impact that you had. And that's going to be like the juicy details people want to hear.
Yeah. And to this question that popped in on the chat about when you don't have quantifiable results. So it might not be a 32%.
Mhm.
Tell me about it anyway. Give me as much as you can. What changed? What improved? What systems were made more efficient? Even if you don't have the numbers, I redid this and then sales had so much more time to do Y, or because of this, X could happen.
Mhm. Yeah, even if you don't have numbers, if it's increased, decreased, saved, I mean, there's certain language that you can use if you don't have numbers. I mean, I've even seen like from a management standpoint, if you are just managing people and maybe how many people were promoted during that time frame. If you're doing employee engagement surveys, like what were the numbers? Maybe, how many people have you been able to keep within the organization? So there's different numbers I think that you can, well, not even numbers, but metrics or just ways that you can show success if it's just not, ROI or whatever the case might be. There's kind of creative ways to show impact.
Perfect. Love that. Yeah. Led, built, improved, all those sorts of things. Let's see.
I see the note about the professional writer communications, and I probably don't know context here, but also as somebody who's worked in the creative and marketing arena too, I mean, I think a big piece of this and specific to designers, and actually I can talk about this, how much time we have, but kind of creating a portfolio and evidence of proof of, I mean, for years I had recruited a couple copywriters and a resume is great, but really they wanted to see samples of your writing samples. And that is your proof right there, is your actual writing itself, as opposed to really, I mean, it's great to quantify it, but I think people want to see your writing, right? And so I think that that's true for design. I even recently helped place a media buyer, and she put together this beautiful PDF of the campaigns, and the hiring manager was, and I was like, this is the first that I've seen in years of somebody who put together this beautiful PDF of just media campaigns. And so I think, when we're talking about a resume is dead, and I don't believe a resume is going to be dead for any time soon, but I think what we're seeing is almost this transformation of how you can show your skill set in a presentation, if that isn't a PDF format, if your job allows it to, right? I know that this isn't going to translate for everybody, but that's kind of thinking outside the box of standing out as just the presentation of your information.
And I'm sure for this candidate of yours, it not only showed all this beautiful work that she's done, but it shows that she is detail oriented, that she, takes initiative, and that she put this together to have ready for you. And that's just, like that alone, regardless of the content, is going to weigh heavy.
Oh, 100%. I mean, when you have the hiring manager say, wow, look at this, like, that's a great thing. So, and of course I gave her a pat on the back. I was like, I didn't even ask for this, but this is great. So I think, and I think, I'm talking, actually, I messaged somebody this week and she's like, I might just go drop my resume off at these local marketing agencies. And I'm like, I mean, let's take it back old school, like 25 years, and let me know how it works out. But I think, there can be some risk, right, in trying something really outside the box. And I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but I think people are just trying to think of creative ways that are relevant that maybe they can get noticed. So I'm here for it.
I think we've both been on the side of LinkedIn where I believe her name was Tasha. Correct me if
Mhm.
I'm wrong. She shot her
Marketing.
shot at Southwest, and she's like, "Let's go." I don't know if she works there yet, but what's the worst they're gonna do? Say no? Like,
Yeah, I know. Well, there was a beautiful reel of, she was a marketer and she put together this fantastic marketing reel as a marketer. And it's like when it's relevant, right? Like content marketers, if they're creating a video, that is a proof of your skill set alone. So is it good for a scientist? Like, I don't know if other scientists are going to watch a video reel, but if it's specific to your industry, I mean, it's sometimes worth a shot, I think.
yeah. I will say I won't name the person, but I had a candidate, software engineering job, large company, like level 2, 100K hybrid in the city kind of thing. And he had a really big section on his resume about all the work he does with plays at the Renaissance Festival. And as a huge supporter of the arts and Renaissance festivals, I'm like, we cannot leave this on there. We cannot have 2 pages about your Shakespearean skits. Like, tell me more about C#. So
I
within
know.
the context, right? Um,
Yeah.
That probably
That's
would have been really
a
great to
fun
present to the
Friday for
fair.
another day of all the things that we've seen that I know I've got stories for days too. But I did see Scott the recommended format for a portfolio. So I mean, ideally, if you can lock down your own URL, I mean, fun hobby of mine to go on like GoDaddy and see what kind of domains I can get. So that's fun to do. I mean, if you can do that, I mean, Wix, I've actually seen people, Canva has an ability. I don't know if it's paid for or not, but I've been seeing a lot of Canva that publishes portfolios, online portfolios with the link. So that might be something. And Canva's so easy to use for all you non-designers of like drag and drop, and you can insert in there. So that might be a good place to start, I think, just because of the barrier to learn is probably pretty low.
Well, I don't want to cut off the questions. We can kind of keep the chat going. I know we are at time, so I want to wrap up, but still kind of leave some things open. So I would say our main takeaway here is remember that we are working in a flawed system. The game is a little messed up. It's a little funky. That doesn't mean you are. We just have to be smarter, more strategic, more creative, and figure out different ways that we can kind of bend the rules of the game in our favor.